from the holy city of Yerushalayim. So I hope that we're all together again, and we're all Jewish people, and we have the Beit HaMikdash built, and we can all enjoy closeness to the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Now, I've done a lot of work in teaching people how to learn Torah, and as Reb David said, my Rebbe, Reb Mordechai Goldstein, Olav Shalom, believed and proved that everyone can learn as long as you have a normal mind. You don't have to be exceptional, but if what's missing is two qualities. One quality is that you have to want to learn, and the second quality is that you have to ask Hashem for the Torah, which is rather surprising because when it comes to other studies, you just go to school and you learn mathematics, physics, calculus, whatever you want, and it doesn't really require too much help from above. But when it comes to Torah, it's very, very important that we always daven that Hashem gives us His chachma, His wisdom. Now, I've worked, as I said, in teaching people how to learn, and Baruch Hashem, the tools that I use are not my own. I wish they were, but Baruch Hashem, some of the greatest rabbis from the past generation have actually written books on how a person should approach Torah and learn Torah. So the two great rabbis that I was given an introduction to a Rabbi Goldstein were Reb Moshe Chaim Latzato and Rabbi Zakampanto. Reb Moshe Chaim Latzato teaches us the foundations of logical thinking. People are sometimes amazed to find out that the Torah requires logical thinking. They think you come in and you just memorize everything and you believe everything, and that's how you learn Torah. But it's not really that way. What you have to come into Torah with is a logical mind. The Kodesh Baruch Hu created the whole universe, and He also created the Torah. And those things have to be very highly logical. That's the foundation. It helps if you learn two languages also, Hebrew and Aramaic. Of course, we're not going to off the bat expect everybody to know Hebrew and Aramaic. That would be a little too much. But the truth is that the Torah is written in Hebrew, and we actually have a fast day when it was translated into Greek. Because when it was translated into Greek and then subsequently into all the other languages, including English, so people read the Torah and they say, oh, yes, that's obvious, that's easy, I understand that. And they think they understand what they're reading, and to a certain extent they do in a very broad way, but they really don't understand the depth of thought that goes into the Torah, and they don't really see that the Torah is from the Kodesh Baruch Hu necessarily. So our job is to understand the Torah, and it's written in the Hebrew language. That's the interface between us and the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Of course, it's translated, as we said, but those translations are very, what we call b'diavad, secondary. The real truth is that one really has to know the holy language, but of course, we don't use English. The second language that we have to know is Aramaic. When we went into Babylonian exile at the destruction of the first temple, we were in Bavel for 70 years, and not everybody came back to Eretz Israel. And the Torah continued being studied in Bavel. And as a matter of fact, those of you that know the Talmud is called the Talmud Bavli, which means the Babylonian Talmud. And that's because it was developed and discussed in the yeshivot in Bavel. So starting with the first destruction, we've had great learning centers in Bavel, and that continued even after we returned to Eretz Israel. And unfortunately, during the second destruction, the major part of the Jewish world went to Bavel, and the education of the learning of Torah continued there. In Eretz Israel, the people who lived here wrote down the Yerushalmi, Talmud Yerushalmi, which was the people who lived in Eretz Israel's version of the Talmud. So those two streams
Oh,
were
sorry,
written in Aramaic.
Rav, I apologize to cut off. I just want to mention I had kind of I'd given the group the introduction, and I have and some of them are on. I kind of know the level of everyone on the group. I think most of them, Baruch Hashem, are at a stage where they kind of know the basics. And maybe since we only have about 14 minutes of Josh Bernstein on, I wonder if we can just jump straight into Baba Kama, like the first document, if that's okay with the Rav.
Okay. I won't belabor the point. I'll go right to the point. The point is that we have to understand, number one, two languages, basic logic, and the special logic in the Torah. Now, in the morning we say Rabbi Shmuel says it's 13 midos of Torah's midrashis behem. And the last thing we have to know is the particular requirements of each particular mitzvah. Okay, I'll go into that in further detail another time. Reb David wants us to go to the.
Yeah. And of course, I checked with the Rav yesterday and got permission to moderate in that fashion, since I know you all.
No problem. No problem.
I would never normally.
No problem.
Okay.
No, it's very important.
Let me give the rabbi
so now
screen sharing ability, but we're in Hutzla Arts. Our attention span's not so good. We need to go straight into the work.
No problem.
Except for Shlomo. Shlomo's in spot. He's good.
Okay. There we go. So I am going to go here. Okay. Just give me 1 second. I'll be sharing my screen. I made a special a box for our class called the study group. Okay. So we'll be having those materials. I'll put the materials that we're going to be covering in that little box and give people access to it. Okay. Just let me. Our study is going to be focused on Baba Kama, and it's going to be focused on one particular aspect of Baba Kama.
I think you might have to stop the screen share and then do it again on the PowerPoint itself. It doesn't work as well as Skype does.
Okay. Screen share and
on the document.
If I did that. Okay.
There we go.
Does everyone see the screen at this point? Okay. I have to give an introduction because one of my things is seeing things in a systematic flow. I don't appreciate things that are what I call the bull in the china shop method of learning, which is just you go into a situation and you hash out whatever you get, and then you walk away with whatever you got, and that's the sum total of your learning. The Torah requires, in my point of view, a much more systematic introduction. So that's why I just have to do this to make sure we're all on the same page. We're all on the same page, okay? Now, what we're going to do, Bezrat Hashem, is start with a pasuk in Baba Kama, and from there we're going to start delving into a specific aspect of damages, which is how do you pay for damages, okay? So this is how I always start off, and I beg you if it's a little too too long, but I have to. There's a Yushami that says the following: Tana b'shem Reb Nehemiah. We sing this. Those of us that are married, we sing it to our wives. If you're not married, you just sing it to whoever's around, including yourself. But it's Eishes Chayil. It's singing the praises of a Jewish woman, and it's written by King Solomon, and it's from Mishlei. Mishlei means that it's a metaphor. So the one of the lines in there says, "Hayas akionio selchem imerachot tovilachmo." The Eishes Chayil is like a merchant ship that brings her lechem, her food, from far away. So this is there's a what we call the mushal and the nimshal. The mushal is a merchant ship. What happens with a merchant ship? You need things in your country, so you send out commercial vessels, and they go to all other countries and pick up those products if you don't have them. They bring them home. So the first level of the mushal is an Eishes Chayil, a Jewish woman, has that quality that whatever she needs for her home, she goes out and makes sure that her home is supplied, whether that's warm blankets, whether that's education for the children, whether that's food, anything that's necessary, she has to go out and make sure that she brings it in. So that's the first level of the mushal and nimshal. The mushal is a merchant ship bringing in what's necessary for the country. The nimshal is a woman, a Jewish woman is like that, bringing everything from outside into a home that's necessary. But there's a third level of the nimshal, which is divrei Torah. And Reb Nehemiah says divrei Torah is anim b'makomam v'ashirim b'makom acher, which means that the words of Torah are poor in their place and rich in other places. What does that mean? That means that in order to understand the Torah in its entirety, you have to start importing information from other places. Okay, how does that work exactly? Okay, so this little PowerPoint slide, which I'll share with you, goes through a series of methods that the Torah uses to transport information from place to place. So here's a 7 of them that happen to be relevant to our discussion. The first one's a binyanav. Those of you that say Rabbi Shmuel in the morning before davening, so you say these. The binyanav, that means it's a what we call fancy language, a syllogism, or a Mametzinu is another type of syllogism. Kal v'chom is a third type of syllogism. And then there's tzad hashava. Tzad hashava means that the Kodesh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu certain links. And through those links, information will start being imported to other places. Okay. I won't go through all of them, but I'll just show you one of them. Okay.
All right, Rabbi, let me just, I forgot, what does a nimshal mean?
Okay. Everyone has the word enter on your keyboard, I suppose. Mm-hmm. When's the last time you walked into your keyboard? So in order to explain a subject matter which is not apparent, we use what's called a metaphor. So we use this word enter. Why is it called an enter key? Because originally what you were supposed to do is someone who created this computer setup said, well, what are we actually doing? We're entering information. That's a mushal. They use something that entering into a car, entering into a home, and then they use that to explain what it means to enter information into a computer. Okay, so that's using a mashal, using a metaphor to explain something that is not readily apparent. Okay, you're trying to teach someone who never saw a computer in their life, what do you have to do? So you have to use language that he knows and then modify it to your system. So that's done in Hebrew. For instance, when we talk about a definition, what's a definition? In Hebrew, they use the term geder. Geder means a fence. And actually in English, the word definition means to define, which means to border, to make a border, to make a fence. So a fence, everybody knows what a fence is from common language. So when I want to explain to you a grammatical term, I have to now take something from the physical world and modify it so that you'll understand this intellectual concept called a definition. So in Hebrew, they call a definition a geder, okay? And that's the word define means to border and to define. So that's what we're constantly doing. In order to explain higher levels of knowledge, we're taking things from the physical world and using them as an analogy or a metaphor to explain higher things. So now, in this SG Shiur, the Shlomo, King Solomon, it's called Proverbs. It really should be called metaphors, I suppose. But what he's trying to do is explain two levels of reality. One is what a Jewish woman is supposed to be, and two, what the Torah is supposed to be. In other words, he's going to use a Jewish woman, once we understand how we define her, as a analogy or a metaphor to how we learn Torah. Okay, so here's the three levels. You have the commercial ship, which is a physical entity which brings items into a country. We have a woman who is a spiritual entity bringing items into her home. That's called the nimshal, the example or of the metaphor, what the metaphor is intended to state. And then the third level is the Torah. The Torah also is like a merchant ship. Why? Because it has to now import information to other places. So that's like the word enter, because you wouldn't, how can I talk to you about the learning method of the Torah? It's an abstraction. So I use something that's known, which is a woman or merchant ship, and then I apply it to the Torah. So the Torah is, the Torah then is, excuse me, the nimshal, or the example is that the Torah uses methods of importing information into to explain any one place. So here I go through in this PowerPoint, you can look at it, 7 of the methods that are used in the Torah, how to generate information from other places. Okay. Now, I don't know if some of you are involved. Everyone's involved, I suppose, on the internet, because we're using it all the time. So I had a very good friend, or I do have a good friend actually. His name is Aaron Marcus, who developed a lot of what you see in Word, in the older versions, of course. He's retired now, but he was also taught in Princeton, and he used to give lectures on computer design. And he used to start off with the Gemara page for his lectures. And he explained to people the page of Gemara is all about nodes and links. If you look around the Gemara page, you'll see that people are linking to other places, whether other places in the Talmud, other places in the Halacha. Those are those little notes on the side. So we have those links. So he talks about nodes and links. Nodes and links means that you have a central hub, and the information that is linked like an internet to other places. And the beauty of the Torah is not only are we linking to those places, but we are importing information from those places to the place we're in. Okay, so if I looked at Google, for instance, and I just say, find every place the word dog is found. So that's a one-way relationship. I write dog, and I want to know every place that is found. So I go from my source word to the target, wherever it's found. But the Torah is much more than that. Those links represent a conduit where information then can be imported from these other places. We probably all saw these old movies where the switchboard operator takes out these cords, and yes, I'll connect you to Mr. Jones, and she plugs it into a hole. Okay, that's her making a link between you and Mr. Jones. So the beauty of the Torah is when you begin to learn and understand what's going on, it's not just a group of statements that exist independently. Those statements are actually a matrix of information that are linked to other places, and information starts flowing from one place to the next. Okay, so we have this pasuk. We started here. Okay, I'm just going to have to open something else here at the moment. How do I do that? I'm stopping the share here. 1 second. Any questions about what I'm saying at this point?
You mentioned the 7 methods. Are you going to go into that in more detail?
Okay, those 7 methods, we're going to go to, that's a very good question. I'm going to introduce them as we use them, okay? In other words, I'll give you the access to that PowerPoint. You could look at it. Maybe we'll have a session on it. But what I'm going to do is give you a hands-on a view of how the system works, okay? So let's see if I can get back to where I was here. Okay. Okay. No, I don't want to share that. I'm a little bit slow on this. I usually use Skype, so I'm a little bit of a novice here in Zoom. So you're gonna have to just bear with me while I get the hang of this thing. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So once it's open, I think the rabbi just has to hit share screen and then can choose the document.
Yeah, the problem is I'm opening the wrong version of it. That's my problem.
Right.
So
I also have my intro page if that would help to open.
Actually, I'm not really looking for that. I'm actually looking for. I'm looking for the. I'm looking for our. Just 1 second. I'm sorry for taking a lot of time, but okay. There we go. Now we're gonna get it. Okay, now we'll do what I want to do. Okay, this introduction is very important because as we go deeper into the learning, we're going to be handling these methods. And as I said, as I mentioned, I'm only going to do what we need at the time because although I have a site that's called learntalmud.org, so anyone as well can go there and just get all this background information, but it's impossible to do everything in one moment. So we're just going to have to do it as we get it. Okay, so now 1 second, I'm trying to get this here. And where is my Zoom? Okay, I don't know where my Zoom meeting now. 1 second here. No, that doesn't. I'm sorry, folks.
That's fine.
How come I'm not getting my Zoom updated? Zoom.
Use Alt Tab.
Okay.
Use Alt Tab and it'll show you all your
Alt tab.
Alt Tab.
Oh yeah, Alt tab. Yeah. Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah, but I want to get to my screen share.
You open Zoom first.
I see David over there.
And then you do screen share from within Zoom. It says on the
What
bottom.
do I do? I'm sorry.
Open your Zoom first.
Oh, there we go. There we go. I got it. My Zoom was. I got it. Okay, here we go. Oh, now I'm going to get it. Okay. I hope everyone sees that.
Yeah, great. Whoa.
Okay. What in the world is this?
Rabbi, you're gonna lose
Okay.
Talmidim if you show them how advanced it is too early.
Well, that's what I said. I have to give you an overview just to know where we're going.
I'm joking. I'm
Everyone
joking.
uses,
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Okay. I don't know. I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't catch the joke. Everyone uses Google Maps, right? So in Google Maps, you write your location and your destination, and it gives you a series of places or alternatives how to go, depending if you want to walk, you want to take a bike, you want a car, a train, bus, whatever it is. It gives you all those outlines. The Torah learning is a little bit like that. If I could use that as, again, as a mushal, as an example, because what we have is we have this information that's linked between these hubs and the links and hubs, and the information is going to start moving from place to place in this matrix of information. So here's an example that we're going to be studying. Okay, of course, it's looks complex, but it really, if we look at this two eyes over here, okay, over here it says Shane and Rego. Anyone know what Shane and Rego is? Anyone learn Baba Kama?
Gore and
Two
gore.
types of
Anything else?
damages.
It's I think gore and
It's
something.
what? I didn't hear.
Gore, like an animal gore. Does it have something to do with? Oh no, maybe not. Not to gore some. an
Okay, no, not bad.
Shane-
Actually, you're
Shane
close.
is Shane is teeth to eat, and Regel is to trample.
Trample. Okay, right, gotcha.
Exactly.
Is
Very
it
good.
is it part of
So
the
when-
four
when
the
we-
four parts of Nezikin? Is Shane and Regal's two of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, we're going to do this in a very systematic way, starting from the Chumash and going all the way down, but I have to sort of give you the Google map of where we are and where we're going to go. Okay. The Torah talks about paying for items that you damage. Okay. And that's, I believe, 2-3 weeks ago, we had Parshas Mishpatim. And there we had a lot of verses that said that you have to compensate someone if you damage his property. Okay. So two of those items that are mentioned are the shore, and in one pasuk it mentions two of those items: the shore, the ox who eats and he tramples. So the word shane means literally a tooth, and that's a code word for an ox eating. And rego means foot, and that's a code word for an ox trampling on someone else's property. So if you don't watch your animal and he goes into someone else's territory and eats that person's field and then tramples over a lot of his tomatoes or potatoes, whatever he's doing, so then you're going to have to pay for that. The payment that's specified in that line says Meitav Sadeu Meitav Kamo Yishalem. That if you want to pay him in land, you can. You don't have to pay him in cash. You can pay him in land. But if you pay him in land, you have to pay him with the best of your land. So if you owe him $1,000 worth of damage, you could give him $1,000 of your best piece of land. That's what it says over there in that pasuk. That information about Meitav Sadeh, Meitav Karma, or Yishalem is only found in that particular verse, nowhere else. Now we have our Mishnah identifies 4 types of damages that are mentioned in the Torah: the ox, the pit, man, and fire. And we're going to later discover that actually there are 24 different verses in the Torah that talk about the possibility of a man or his property damaging and the requirement to pay for that damage. So for instance, right after talking about the animal damaging, the Torah talks about a person who is watching, that's called a shomer, another person's property, and that property that he's watching does some damage. So now he's responsible to pay for that damage. Okay, he's called a shomer, and he has to pay for the damage that the item that he was watching did if it was an animal. Okay, now there in that particular case, it doesn't say anything about Meitav Sadeh or Meitav Karma. It says nothing about paying with the best of your land, but it does use the word Yishalem. If you see over here this red arrow, it says the word Yishalem, that you have to pay the owner for the damage that occurred while you were watching his animal. That word Yishalem is also found in the pasuk of Shein and Regel, in the pasuk of Meitav. If you see over here, it says Meitav Sadeu, Meitav Karmo, Yishalem. Okay, so the method of bridging these two verses is through the word Yishalem, is called a Gezerah Shava. That means a word found in two different verses can act as a link, and information can start going over that link to another pasuk. That's called Gezerah Shava.
Rabbi,
That
let me
particular
just
method.
ask, like, a natural
Right.
question comes up for me here, and everyone's welcome to ask questions, of course. Yishalem, is a word in the Torah going to always have the same definition in all places?
Very good. Excellent. Let's say the word in Hebrew, before a direct object, you have the word et, right? So it says, Bereshis bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz. So that word is found in, who knows, maybe 90% of the verses in the Torah. It says et right before a direct object. So if this method of Gezerah Shava was applicable everywhere, then all the Pesukim would mix together in one gigantic mess. So the rule of Gezerah Shava, this linkage between this word, is that you can only use that rule if you have a handed down tradition from Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu to the Zakanim, all the way down to your rabbi, to yourself. If you don't have a handed down tradition, which goes all the way back 3,300 years, that those two words form bridges, then you cannot make that. So that's why all the words etz in the Torah cannot be made a bridge to the other words, okay? There's only a limited amount of those in the Torah, and you can only use them if you have this direct inside information, okay? Unlike some other things that we'll be studying, where you can draw inferences and make extensions, this particular method called Gezerah Shava is limited to a pure handed down tradition from Hashem, all the way from Moshe Rabbeinu down to us.
Sorry
okay?
to, like, I don't want to sound like I'm just bringing difficulty after difficulty, but if it's handed down over 3,300 years, then why sometimes would one rabbi make the Gezerah Shava and one rabbi wouldn't, potentially? It seems like there's machloikis sometimes in whether or not you make the link or not. Where does that stem from?
Okay. So that question I'd like to put on the side, okay?
Fine.
I don't want to give simple answers to that question, okay?
Okay, fine.
When we actually start studying and we use a real life example, then that question will be clarified. But at this point, I don't want to get into that. It's too deep of a question. But well stated, put it down the side, and we'll eventually, Bezat Hashem, we never talk about it. However, the similar word handed down from Moshe Mount Sinai is written in the Talmud as link words, okay? And actually only 4 words are used in this Gezerah Shava. Tachas, the key word is Tachas Nasini Yishalem Kesef. Those are the first word, the 4 words. So those are link words. Rashi and Rabbeinu Hananel explain exactly how those links occur, okay? And this chart is really taken from Rabbeinu Hananel's explanation. Okay, so let's see how it works in reality. Okay, so we said in the base pasuk, the central pasuk over here, we have this word meitav in the case of Shein and Regel. Okay, and in that pasuk it says the word yishalem. Correct. Now, the Torah also talks about an ox goring another ox, okay, or another person, but goring. And in that pasuk, it also uses the word yishalem. So the Gezerah Shava moves that information of meitav through the word yishalem over to the pasukim that's talking about goring, even though goring does not say anything about paying with the best of your field. This link, halacha Moshe Sinai, given to Hashem to Moshe Sinai, represents the link where that halacha moves. Okay, now once it gets to Karen means goring. There's another link which is called tachat, which moves it to 3 other places in the Torah. So let's say here, this pasuk is talking about a person who inflicts injury on another person, and he has to pay what's called tsar. Tsar means he has to pay that person for the injury and the pain inflicted for that injury. It does not say in that pasuk, it says anything about paying with meitav sedei and meitav karma. Yet it does say he has to pay tachat accordingly, the word tachat accordingly. That word is found in the pasuk of goring, and is also found in the verse of paying for pain. So now that's going to represent a link word where we're going to take the imported information of meitav, which we moved from Shein and Regel into Karen. We're now going to export it into this pasuk that's talking about pain. And if you have to pay for that damage, for the pain inflicted on another individual, and you want to use land, you have to pay with the best of your land. Okay, so that was a hop that we went from Shein Regel to Karen through Yishalem over to Tsar. Now there's a 4th hop, and that's the word nasan. Okay, once the information is imported into Tsar, into pain, we see that there's another type of damage where a man could claim that his wife, who he married and thought was a virgin, was not. And he actually lies about it, and she was. So he has to pay what's called motzi shemra. Motzi shemra means that he's defamed that woman's character, and he has to pay. That's a damage, and he has to pay for it. It does not say anything in that pasuk about if he wants to pay those damages with land, he has to pay the best land. But how do we know that he can use land, and that land has to be the best land that he has to give? Of course, say she has $5,000 worth of damage there for defamation of character, and he wants to pay in land. Well, we're going to import that information from SAR through the link of Natsan. So we see exactly as Reb Nehemiah said, that the Pesukim are like a merchant ship. When we need information here, which is incomplete, it says nothing about Meitav, we are going to have to go through these 3 stops in order to get it. Here's the source pasuk. We're going to have to go through this link. Our Google map is going to tell us how to get there through this link into Karen. Then we're going to go through the link of Tachat, okay, and move that information over to Tsar, to pain. And over here, finally, we're going to move it all the way out here. So this is how the commercial vessel travels from its source to its destination.
Sorry,
Now,
Rabbi,
is
there a maximum number of links that it can travel?
It's only halacha Moshe Sinai. Wherever we have these links defined by the Kodesh Baruch Hu himself, that's how far it goes.
So how far, are there some that go more than 3?
I can't answer you, I don't know. It could be. Usually it's 1-to-1. It's the simplest one. The reason why I bring this one out is because it's a 4-level Gezerah Shava. So I don't know if there's
Right.
ones that are
Okay,
larger
fine,
than that.
fine.
Okay, good. So now this introduction is to tell us a very important point, that the Torah is not just individual points or individual verses, but those verses now are going to be linked. And we're going to know, or we have to study what links are, what the links are. Now, this link is a link that's called Halacha Moshe Misinai. That means if Moshe didn't get the link, we can't invent it, or we can't see it, or we can't discover it. But there's other links which we can use. Okay, so for instance, here is something called a Kal V'chomer. Okay, so Meitav exists in Shein and Regel, right? But when it comes to a Hegdesh, you see this word Hegdesh over here? In the Torah, we have certain items that are given to the temple. You can donate things to the temple, okay? And those items then become consecrated. They become holy. What happens if you donate a ox to the temple? The temple now is going to use it for a korban tzibur, for a temple offering for the whole congregation. And then Mr. Shmuel, his ox kills that temple ox. Okay. Now he owes money to the temple because he destroyed temple property. It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that temple property has to be paid by if you're going to pay the damage with land, that you have to use the best of your land. You can search throughout, you can make a Google search of the whole Torah, you will not find that law at all. How do we get that law into the damage done to temple property? So Rabbi Akiva uses what's called a Kal V'chomer. A Kal V'chomer means we're allowed, and this is a logical method which we are allowed to do. It does not have to be Moshe Sinai. It's a logical method which says that if a law exists in a lenient case, it should certainly exist in a more stringent case. So, for instance, a regular Jewish person is not supposed to marry a non-Jewish woman. Okay. Now, can a Levi do it, or a Cohen marry a non-Jewish woman? So there we would explain that that's a Kal V'chomer. If he can't marry a simple Jewish person who's from one of the 10 tribes, so certainly people who have more stringencies like the Levite and the Cohen, he certainly couldn't marry it. So that's called a Kal V'chomer. Since I have a stringency in the lower level, I can then move it logically up to the more stringent level. Okay.
Right. Let me ask something, and then I've asked a few questions. I would love if Yaakov, David, and Shlomo, if they had any questions, to jump in, because there's a lot popping up for me here. The question I want to ask is, what happens if there's a Kal V'chomer you could make and it opposes the Gezerah Shava? Is there a system of prioritization of how you move things in the Torah?
Okay. Fortunately, we have learned together, and we have opened up that topic, which is a topic between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. Okay. So again, that is a discussion how far a Kal V'chomer can go. So I don't want to get too deeply into it, because I'd rather in our further lessons enter into those variations. Okay, but all these systems do have rules. Okay, so it depends. So all these systems do have rules, but we have to locate them at We have to go from kala home. We have to go from the easy
All right.
cases to the
Can
more.
we
stringent
open
ones.
it up
Okay,
to see
so
if
I'm just
anybody
saying
has,
that.
can we open it up to see if anybody has
Yeah, please,
questions at this point? This is a
please
lot
do.
to take in this chart. Yaakov, please also chime in. You've been learning some of this methodology, so I'm sure there's stuff coming up for you. I have the benefit of going forward and now going back, so it's very helpful.
So the people that have given these lessons to, of course, have gotten this introduction, but
Right.
okay. Anyway, yeah,
Well,
let's throw it open if anyone
So,
has
Rabbi,
any questions.
Yeah.
Here,
Okay.
I just want to
Yes.
just go over. So basically, we've determined that if two things happen, a trample, a shane, or a regular occur, we have to pay accordingly with the best of choices to the link word that depends on what we are, what our level of shomer is. That's the first level, right? So it would depend on, am I just a guardian? Am I a watcher? Am I a paid watcher? All that kind of stuff. That's what those next green circles are after the link word. Yes, Shalem.
Okay, very good question. All these greens are pasukim mentioned in the Torah. They're all verses in the Torah. The Torah not only talks about animals trampling on other property, but it talks about people watching other people's property, and subsequently the animal does damage or is damaged. Okay, so all these greens represent verses in the Torah. Okay, are you with me on that? So we have for instance, a person who's watching for nothing. That's a shomer chinam. The shoel, person who borrows something, someone who rents something. Then we also have a person who steals. Whether he steals it openly or hiddenly, that's a gazan, a ganav, or big items and little items. Okay, so all these greens are individual verses in the Torah. The only one that specifies the payment has to be with the best of land is these two in the center. That's the only verse where we'll see this word meitav sedeh or meitav karma yushalem.
Sorry, what are those two in the center? I can't.
Shane and Regal.
Shane and Regal, right.
Those are Shane and Regal in the middle. Okay,
Right.
that they're in the same verse. Okay, and those two, it says clearly that the person has to pay with the best of his land. Okay,
Right.
but in all these other greens, which are other verses in the Torah, it says nothing about paying with the best of land. Sometimes it says you have to pay with kesef, with money. Sometimes it'll say you can pay with other types of property, movable properties, but it doesn't mention anywhere in the Torah the obligation to pay with the best of your land if you're paying with land. Okay, now
But that red arrow.
Yes.
So that
red arrow is the
basically
link.
means pay accordingly. That's pay accordingly, basically, is what that means.
Now, that red arrow means that the word Yishalem is found in this verse and in this verse.
So we're carrying over the word Yishalem together with Meitav to that other place.
No,
is that correct?
No, not Meitav. It's not Meitav to those other things. My question is first of all, does Yishalem mean to pay accordingly?
Yishalem just means to pay. Yishalem means to pay, but it doesn't say how you should pay.
Okay, right. So that's why I just threw in accordingly. Okay, so then the second thing is these link words, they'll be different in every single Gemara we read. They're not,
That's correct.
So
That's correct.
It just depends on what the action item is related to what's modifying the subject of whatever we're dealing with.
That's correct.
Okay.
In other words, whatever, and it doesn't happen all the time. I have to warn you. It's limited to specific cases which are handed down to us from Moshe Sinai, okay? You can't do this yourself. You can't say that the word father is mentioned in this pasuk and the word father is mentioned in another pasuk. Therefore, I'm going to mix the ideas from one verse to the next. You can't do that. It's only specifically, you have to have that information handed down as a link from Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu all the way down to our present generation. Okay.
So, Rabbi, I just got confused for a second. I think David was correct what he said to me. I just want to verify because I got off a little bit on this. So, I thought that the Yishalem was going to carry over that whole, like the idea of Meitav together from Shane and Regal to those other places, but it sounds like, because those words are used together, but it sounds like what you all are suggesting is that just the word Yeshalom, the way in which it's used, is going to be carried over. Which one's correct?
Well, let's make an analogy, okay? Let's say this is a highway. This is Highway 325, you know, taking you from Dallas to Austin, whatever. I know which highway goes there, right? Okay. So that highway is going to move you from this hub, from this location to that location, right?
Right.
So now, if we say the verse is Dallas, whatever, okay. So this verse that talks about Shane and Regel has a certain amount of information in here that's not mentioned in this verse at all. The information is that when you do damage and you want to pay for it, you have to pay with the best of your field. That's only mentioned in this verse that's talking about Shane and Regel. How do I get that concept over here where it's not mentioned? Well, I have to go along this highway, the Yeshalem highway. Yeshalem is a word that's found both in this pasuk of Meitav and found in this verse of Shomer Chinam out here. It says Yeshalem here and it says Yeshalem here. That represents a highway where this information now can be transferred from here to here. Is that clear?
It's the reason it's confusing is because the word Meitav should probably be a little bit lower in the green circles for Shane and Regel as opposed to on the same orange level as Yeshalem. That's why there's confusion about
Okay.
Meitav.
The difficulty with this particular verse is that it has two different types of damages in it. That's why I
Got it.
do with
Okay.
this one.
Hey, it's 11 o'clock. I
Okay.
really appreciate
Right. This was
I'd love to
fantastic,
spend
yeah.
more time, but I've gotten like 50 email messages and my phone's been ringing off the wall.
Okay, David, we'll see
Okay,
you, and
so-
thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Maybe we can stay on for just 2 or 3 more minutes with Yaakov and Shlomo, but we'll try to always cut it off at the.
Yeah, I don't want to miss too much. I'm hanging on by a thread, but I'm getting it.
I know,
so.
I know. I'm gonna send out the recording to you and Josh, etc. And thanks so much for getting this off the
Thank
ground,
you.
David.
This
Yeah,
is
this is
fabulous. Fabulous.
I
Really
agree.
appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. See you, David.
No.
Okay, so maybe if the others
good.
want to jump in, so it sounds like Maytov also gets carried over across that highway.
That's correct.
Right,
Meitav is going to travel along the Yeshalom highway.
Right.
That's the
right.
point.
Or at
Okay,
least we'll
and
discuss that. Some will say it does, some will say it doesn't. We'll see.
Well, actually, everyone agrees with this Gezerah Shava. This particular Gezerah Shava, there is absolutely no disagreement with.
Okay,
Everyone
fine,
holds
fine.
that this Gezerah Shava is accepted. We don't have anyone that says, no, Yeshalom doesn't work, no, Tachat doesn't work, it doesn't work in Nasa. This just happens to be agreed upon.
Okay. Let's see what Shlomo and Yaakov, if they have any thoughts, just because I really, that's kind of the beauty of what I'm experiencing with the rabbi is that it's like the questions that I'm asking have already been anticipated. So sometimes I feel like with some people I'll ask a question and it's like asking a good question is a bad thing. But with Rav Tchaikovsky, Baruch Hashem, Shlita, that a good question's a good thing. He'll tell me, move to the front of the class. So Yaakov and Shlomo, you're welcome to ask if you have anything. If not, any reflections or comments or anything. I'll just say for me, I know this could be overwhelming. The chart the first time I saw was overwhelming, but to actually do some work in the text and now to see the chart again, it makes me think of someone should do this, series every couple years. This is like an amazing experience, going back and looking at the chart now and having some idea of how these things flow. So, yeah.
Okay, great. You moved to the top of class with that comment. Great. Thank you. Anyway, the point is that what I'm trying to do is to help people who have limited knowledge of the Torah system. And even if people that do learn, they may not be able to understand how the system works because they're involved in the details and not necessarily looking at the process. That's a very big statement I just made, but that's really what these great rabbis, the Ramchal and the Visson Kampenton, are doing. They're helping us with process. And I said, in the morning, every morning, I meet people before Pesukei de Zimra, they say, the Shloshes Shrei Midos of the Torah is Nidreshes Behem. That's talking about the process that the Torah is using. Okay, you with me? So you always have to have the rules and the applications happening. And that's what the Gemara does. The Gemara puts together the rules and the particular application of the case. And when you see both of them operating, you get to the result. But if you don't know the rules, then it's sort of just mystical how the results come out. Okay.
Right.
So what I'm trying to do here is to add a visual dimension, just to show you that how the information is linked and how information moves. Let me just give you one more example here. Okay, I gave you the example of Kal V'chomer. What's the difference between Kal V'chomer here in purple and the red Gezerah Shava? Okay, so there's two levels of darshaning. One level, as we said, is called Halacha Moshe Misinai. You're only allowed to do that if you have a Masara from Hashem through Moshe all the way down to your rabbi. But these logical methods you are allowed to do. Now, of course, we're not talking about beginning people that don't know anything and is trying to apply these methods. That would be a little silly. If we let you after going to one engineering course to start building the Empire State Building, I don't think that would be too advisable. So we have to put a rider on this. Although this can be done, we expect it to be used in the hands of experts. Okay, so when we see Rebbe Akiva darshaning a Kal V'chomer, so he's an expert. For us to do it, we can do it theoretically, but we have to do it with a certain amount of caution because we're not expert in the field. So that being said, we'll see that some people, some rabbis will darshan, will explain Kal V'chomer, and other people don't. Like, for instance, in this little piece of Torah, we have a machlokus between Rebbe Akiva and Rebbe Shmuel, whether you're allowed to make this Kal V'chomer at the Hekdesh or not. Okay, so that would be a deeper study. But I'm just saying that since it's something that can be done by a human being without a direct inside information from Hashem, so there it can be open to dispute. Okay, we can have a dispute on the point. My basic point here is that we have certain methods which are halacha Moshe Misinai, and certain methods which can be done by great Talmidei Chachamim because they're logical based. Let me give you another example. Here, for instance, we have something called a toledah. Okay, so we have Karen. Karen is mentioned in the Torah, a shore goring another animal, but it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah what happens if my animal kicks your animal, or he bites your animal, or he shoves your animal off a cliff, right? So there he didn't gore him. He used another type of his body to injure that animal. We don't have any indication that you would be, no physical indication in words, that you would be obligated to pay for such a damage. How do we then move that law of paying for damage to these other cases? So we make what's called a we make what's called a toledah. A toledah is a binyanav. Okay, a binyanav. A binyanav means that the quality that exists here in Karen exists over here in kicking, and therefore, since they are equal in quality, I can move the law logically from one place to the next. So Karen, we're going to learn, represents when an animal has intent to do damage. Unlike when he's eating. When he's eating, he has no intent to do damage, he's just hungry. Or when he's walking, he has no intent to do damage, he's just walking from point A to B, and it happens that your attaché case is under his legs. But when he exercises his horn, his Karen, there he has intent to damage the other animal. So Karen represents a class of activities called kavanah lahazek, intent to do damage. Okay, so since that's the underlying principle of Karen, we then can move through a Mamatsino to these other cases, because when he kicks, he also has intent to do damage. He's doing it with a different part of his body, but he's not walking with that body. That would be rego if he was walking and walking over your item. When he's kicking, his intent is to damage the other animal, so that would make it a tolada of a subcategory of Karen.
Great.
So
Rabbi,
this,
I'm gonna stop the recording and then if anybody has any final like questions.